Thank you, everybody, for being here, joining us. It is days like this when it is particularly great to be mayor of this city, and shows how much we can do individually and collectively and as a city to advance equity in our city. I'm delighted to announce the recipients of our 2020 Equitable Development Initiative Awards, but I also get assigned my legislation to transfer 2 city-owned properties to some of our city's cherished Black-led organizations. To start off, I want to really celebrate the fact that today we get to provide nearly $6 million in funding to support our community-based organizations. Those organizations are on the front lines serving our community, particularly our communities of color, in neighborhoods that are most at risk for displacement. This ability to do this every year is a great thing for Seattle. As we know, we need to be doing more, but today's awards, we should be really celebrating these organizations. There's many organizations that also deserve funding. We can't do all, so you'll hear about some of the other great people who apply year after year, and every year we'll be able to advance the ball more. Today's awards will be used to support interests like building organizational capacity, property acquisition, and paying for capital improvements. As many of you know, the Equitable Development Program is a city program that is grounded in community and led by community. It's the reason that this program has been so successful and is launched and helped support many great things in our city. I continue to say and believe that the best ideas we have come from community itself. Top down doesn't work, ground up does. And we are bringing forward the ideas and solutions that are brought to us by community and helping making sure that we can keep pace in our communities, particularly our communities of color. Our city is one of the fastest growing cities over the past decade. And even as we are in the midst of a global pandemic, we're seeing house sales booming and housing costs remain some of the highest in our country. The organizations receiving funding today are truly representative of the soul of our city. They're on the front lines helping to sustain their communities. And without these investments, we would see a further decline in the great culture that helps create our city and its vibrancy. For years, our communities of color, from Rainier Beach to Del Ridge to the Central District to the International District, have been fighting to remain in their neighborhoods as they watch their neighbors being forced out due to an affordability crisis. It is getting more and more expensive for not just the people to stay in place, but the organizations that serve them. Now more than ever, we have to ensure that as our communities grow, they continue to reflect not just our city's history, but our great diversity. With the awards we're announcing today, we're partnering with more than 24 community-initiated projects combating displacement across Seattle. The city is supporting 20 organizations during this funding round this year, including Africatown Midtown Plaza, Bird Bar Place, Central Area Youth Association, the Chief Seattle Club, the Ethiopian Community in Seattle, the Multicultural Community Center, Rainier Valley Midwives, Rainier Beach Action Coalition, Wing Luke Museum, and more. These organizations really are the jewels in the crown, pushing us forward to address many disparities that are causing displacement in our communities, and also providing places for real cultural centering. While these investments are not enough, we will continue to build on this funding through vehicles like the Equitable Communities Initiative, because we're ever going to move the needle, providing true economic vitality to our most impacted communities. These programs are a place to begin, but by no means are they the end. We must be willing to make generational investments if we want to right the generational disparities that exist in our city. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Councilmember Tammy Morales, and then we'll hear from some other speakers today too. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mayor Durkan. I want to congratulate you for doing what 3 mayors before you have been unable to accomplish. It's very exciting that today the Central Area Senior Center will take over the city-owned property that it has operated for nearly 4 decades. So congratulations, Diane. By hosting this very important event, we're honoring the priorities of our community members and the hard work that they are doing to create the kinds of neighborhoods that they want. And in this environment, especially when Seattle is working so hard on anti-displacement strategies and responding at the same time to the economic impacts of COVID-19, nearly $6 million that are being awarded today will launch the kinds of changes sought by organizations that are led by and for Black and Brown communities in neighborhoods like mine that are at high risk of displacement. As a former board member, I'm especially happy to see Rainier Valley Midwives as a recipient. One of the silent inequities in our community is maternal and infant mortality. And so it is vitally important that we have culturally competent, holistic maternal health care that honors the life experiences and a person's humanity, especially in, when people are so such sensitive and fragile times as pregnancy. With great responsibility also comes great reward. And so today, the Central Area Senior Center is finally in control of their building and their grounds. We'll be able to begin the renovations that they have been planning so long. I'm excited that that work will be able to get started. And I'm especially thrilled that a worn out building be repurposed, make way for the development of the Food Innovation Center, which will create a healthy food industry in Rainier Beach, create job opportunities, and serve as a catalyst in a neighborhood that is in need of economic development and investment. Before coming to the council, I'm sure many of you know, I worked at Rainier Beach Action Coalition as a community organizer. RBAC really embodies for me what it means to build community wealth by actively buying land for communities of color to own, to prevent displacement, and to build on local cultural assets. So this is great news and exactly what I mean when I talk about building community wealth in our neighborhoods. The Equitable Development Initiative awards and the transfers that are happening today are huge steps in the right direction to the cultural and heritage preservation of our communities of color. So I want to thank the community organizations for the very important work that you do. And I do also want to thank the staff at OPCD and the entire EDI team who really bring a passion for equity to the work that they do on behalf of the city. And I do want to apologize for that I can't stay for questions. We're in a budget hearing, so I have to get back to work. But I want to thank the mayor and thank all of the organizations that are here for the work you do to make our neighborhoods better and to keep our communities of color in Seattle. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Councilmember, and we will now hand it over to Tara to speak on behalf of the Midwives Association.
Thank you so much, Tammy and Mayor Durkan, and everyone here. My name is Tara Lawal, and I am the co-founder and executive director of the Rainier Valley Midwives. And to all of you, I give you my sincerest aloha. The Rainier Valley Midwives are so excited for this opportunity. You are truly catapulting our organization to the next level, and we thank you for trusting us with your funding. We're grateful to receive this initiative, and it's giving us the momentum that we need to build a birth center of our dreams and of the community's dreams. This last year, as we started to organize and look towards the community for help in finding out what do they want, it was very clear that they wanted a birth center where they felt safe and protected and reflected in the center, knowing that they would have the best care and they would be empowered to trust their own body and to do the things that they need to do for their family. We just want to thank you for believing in us and supporting our vision to provide equitable healthcare here in South Seattle. Mayor Durkan, back to you.
Thank you, Tara, and to all the EDI recipients. And Tara, thank you for bringing Ohana to Seattle. All told, since 2017, the 36 million EDI funding for organizations has been leveraged to more than 105 million in city funding through our Office of Housing, Human Services Department, and our Early Education Department. So these EDI grants work with so many other grants we're giving throughout the city of Seattle. Because what I heard when I came in as mayor is people needed holistic solutions. They needed to be able to dream with the city as it grew. So thank you for all the work you've done. I also want to thank the whole staff of OPCD because they work tirelessly, and working through this pandemic has been challenging for everyone. But every city worker who continues to show up and do their job to make Seattle more equitable really is doing the whole city a favor. So everybody at OPCD, Sam Asefa couldn't be here, but I want to acknowledge him and his work as well. And then we're going to move forward with a new model for how we do stuff here today. But we'll be doing the bill signing for the Central Area Senior Center and Fire Station 6 next. Is that how you want to move forward, Anthony?
That's correct, Mayor. So we can sign both at the same time.
All right. So this is really a wonderful double header to be able to do these EDI grants and to also be able to sign over the Central Area Senior Center and Fire Station 6 to the community organizations that you're going to hear from today. I have had so many great times at the Central Area Senior Center over my lifetime, and have been there for weddings and receptions. I've played bingo. I've gone to lunches and had to dance with the DJ. And it is really the heart of the Central Area in so many ways, and has continued to serve not just our senior population from the Black community, but the whole families, a place where people could be united. And Diane Ferguson has been in the trenches working with that community and making sure the Senior Center remained vibrant during this really difficult time of COVID, and immediately figured out, how do we move from being a place where people gather to a place that also provided other supports, while also making sure that the city followed through on its obligation and commitment to turn this over to community. I've got to tell you, she is a great, great advocate, and we are very fortunate to have her in the city of Seattle. And the same with Wyking Garrett, who you will hear from. He took, with other activists in the Central District over generations, his own family's generations, to build upon their dream for what the Central Area needs to represent for so many families that have been displaced from there, and to build back on the land, and knowing that land was the key to making good place. So in signing these two things today, you'll hear from them, their plans for these two properties, the heritage that goes with those properties, and how important it is for us in the city of Seattle at this moment in time. If we truly want to make good on our promise of greater equity, then we also have to recognize that displacement has generational traumatic impacts, and making sure that there are spaces that are kept for our Black community and our Black community to plan and build on, and to have that kind of vibrancy and everything that goes with it is so critical. So it's with great honor today that I'm going to be able to sign both of the bills that transfer over the Central Area Senior Center and Fire Station 6. And then you'll hear from Diane and Wyking. So first I will sign, show that it's finally done in law, because otherwise I think that, Diane will then go to work again, right? So I have 10 here. And we have the ordinance. First is the ordinance for the Central Area Senior Center that I will sign. And I will also sign for Fire Station 6. After lots of work for many years, it is official. Thank you, everybody, for all you've done to make this real. Thank you.
About with the ruler when you work.
Thank you, Mayor. And we will now hand it over to Wyking to deliver some remarks on the transfer of Fire Station 6.
Yes, good morning and thank you. It's good to be here today. This is definitely a historic day in the city and shows us a glimpse of what we want the future to be, which is one that includes us. I would like to thank all of the community members from that work together through the Race and Social Equity Task Force, representing different neighborhoods in the city that were facing the same challenges. The Chinatown International District, PDA, Wing Luke, Friends of Little Saigon, Rainier Beach Action Coalition, Home Site, Puget Sound Sage, Black Community Impact Alliance, and all of the Multicultural Community Center, and all of those who have worked for years to make the EDI, Equitable Development Initiative, and the Equitable Development Fund a reality. I think this really, again, demonstrates, as the mayor said, that real solutions, the best, most effective and comprehensive solutions, come from the communities that are facing the challenges and closest to the problems, and then go up and can be best facilitated by our government and administrators. We are definitely honored to be able to move forward and continue the legacy that's been established in our community by many. Seattle is a booming global tech and innovation hub. We also know that our community has been a hub and source of genius and innovation for decades. The Central District, the African American community, you know, from William Gross to Fitzgerald Beaver to D. Charlene Williams, from Quincy Jones and Ray Charles and Ernestine Anderson, James Washington to Zenobia Bailey, Jimi Hendrix to Ishmael Butler, and so many more, Weedle's Groove, and Vitamin D and Tribal Productions, just so much innovation and entrepreneurial spirit and creativity that has emanated from the Central District and really given Seattle much of its soul, as well as social justice and human rights ethics. The William Gross Center looks to continue the legacy of an unrecognized or under-recognized Seattle pioneer, who is the namesake for the facility, William Gross. He was a pioneer, early pioneer of Seattle, and he bought 12 acres of land from Henry Yesler in 1882 and established the Central District as a settling place for African Americans to grow as he partitioned off his land. We look forward to William Gross Center for Cultural Innovation and Enterprise at the former Fire Station 6, continuing that legacy by creating space for our creatives, our entrepreneurs, just the general brilliance in our community to be nurtured, to develop, and be connected with providing value in the larger economy around us. We think it's critical at this time when we know that decades, over a century of compounding effects from systemic anti-Black racism, exclusion, has caused a situation where we do have a reality of Jim Crow apartheid in Seattle in this time. And when we say apartheid, and the root word being apart, we look at the statistics that show large gaps in income, large gaps in wealth, large gaps in home ownership, large gaps in business ownership and size. And so what we see is that our community is really apart from many of the best statistics, the good quality of life indicators, and we've been too close to the negative quality of life indicators, including the school to prison pipeline, and unfortunately too often death. And so we see, again, that these investments demonstrate that another future is possible, that Seattle, if these type of examples of successful solutions developed by community and then embraced and invested by our government, can be scaled across sectors, including private, corporate, philanthropy sectors, that we can create a Seattle that is a world-class city that's inclusive of the communities of the world that have helped make this city, and not a one-class city that's really exclusive to only a particular element of society, mostly white, mostly high-tech or high-wage earners. And so again, we see William Grove Center, particularly at this time when we know the devastating economic impacts on our community disproportionately from COVID-19, that we have to accelerate empowering our businesses to be able to grow and hire more people, empowering our community members to channel their brilliance and their skills and their talents into workforce opportunities that are around us. And so we look forward to William Grove Center being a place that allows our community to develop our tech and innovation ecosystem there in the Central District, our Africatown Cultural Innovation District, and again, provide a path forward for so many of our community members that have been left out and are being pushed out. So again, we thank the city, the mayor, the Office of Planning and Community Development, and the staff that has worked hard there, and the council for prioritizing and moving these things forward. It's been a long time. It's been 8 years working on the William Grove Center at Fire Station 6. And so we're excited to get in there, top of the year, to begin bringing value to our community as firefighters previously brought value to our community previously from that site. So thank you.
Thank you, Wyking. And we will now go over to Diane Ferguson.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. We certainly applaud you for signing that legislation. We are so ready to get started on creating a brighter future than we already have. So we thank you. We thank the City Council for voting in the affirmative for us to have this property. And I also want to thank the forefathers who had the vision back in the early 1970s, actually 1968, to want to create a place where African-American seniors could gather and have services that they needed. And so it's been 50 years, 50 plus years, but I applaud all of the work that the previous directors, the previous board presidents, all of the members that have come and gone at the Central Area Senior Center, because this is a vision that they've wanted for a long time, to have roots in the city of Seattle, to have a place where their grandchildren, their children could gather. I would just like to share my own story. I came to Seattle to come to graduate school. I'm originally from Tacoma, and my father said to me when I came to Seattle, now you make sure you go over to the Central Area Senior Center and volunteer when you have time, because I have some good friends that are there. And so, I always listened to my dad. So I went to the Central Area Senior Center, volunteered. Actually, several of my bosses at the time were active members in the Bridge program. And then when I got married, I decided to have my reception at the Central Area Senior Center. Little did I know that one day I would actually work at the Central Area Senior Center as the director, but that's the kind of place it is. It's really a community place where everybody pitches in. Everyone has a vision to help their neighbors, to assist seniors and their families in maturing and growing older with friendship and love, and a place where they can get services that they need. And so this is very meaningful, because so often what happens as communities get displaced, the places that they gathered and had fun become places that just have plaques on the ground or plaques on the wall that says that once upon a time, this was the home of. And so by signing this legislation, it is ensuring that it won't be a once upon a time story, but it will be an ongoing, continuous story where new faces will come, old faces will leave, and the activities and the programs can continue. Some of our immediate opportunities are to retrofit the building, to get a generator, to engage in an ongoing planning process, which we actually have been doing for quite a while now as to how to expand the footprint of the center so that we can have more programs, more activities, but also to have a larger physical space. We will immediately look at upgrading the parking lot. We have a permit that we received last year that's good until the end of 2021. And we will continue to readapt our programs and activities in the midst of COVID-19. We have started our own YouTube channel. We are teaching seniors how to utilize tablets so that they can watch the YouTube channel and engage in more digital programming. And we also have been delivering meals and groceries. We are gearing up just next week to participate with a number of other partners to do 400 Thanksgiving baskets through our partnership with Safeway Albertson and Food Lifeline and First AME Church and a number of other organizations. So we have a bright future, and it's become even brighter today by knowing that we will not be displaced and that African American seniors, all other seniors within the Central District in King County, as well as community members, can continue to host events and programs and engage with us at that physical site. So we applaud you, Mayor. Thank you so much. And we are grateful to the city councils for voting in the affirmative that this should happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. And we will now go to Uba Gaderi for a few thoughts on EDI and the property transfers.
Everyone, again, my name is Uba Gaderi, the Equitable Development Division Manager for the Office of Planning and Community Development. As you have heard, EDI is currently partnering with over 24 local organizations to unlock the full potential of the local economy by dismantling barriers and expanding opportunity for low income and communities of color. Through accountable public action and investments, we are collectively advancing racial equity outcomes that centers community ownership, wealth building, and anti-displacement strategies. Before I go any further, I would like to start by thanking community members who have spoke and who have continued to partner with us and hold us accountable. I would like to thank the mayor and council members that have been advancing this work in partnership with community, as well as our director, Sam Asefer, who could not be here today, but also Director Andreas Mantilla, who's here, and other EDI directors. For 4 years now, when I joined the Equitable Development team in partnership with Accountable to Communities, we have had a vision and a dream. We saw the possibility of communities most impacted by growth, not taking charity and not begging us to do right by them, but rather leading their own development and planning. At the time, most people probably could not see the vision that we knew was possible. We live in a country that is often still unable to grasp that Black, Brown, Native, and BIPOC communities' capacity for self-determination. Our vision is the difference between homeless housing and Chief Seattle Club's Ala Ala project, infused with belonging for our unsheltered relatives. It's the difference between a hospital and the Rainier Valley Midwives Birth Center, grounded in love for pregnant women and their families. It's the difference between checking a box on a 10-year-old neighborhood plan and the Rainier Beach Action Coalition purchasing a property to realize their vision for a food innovation center. Now it has been 4 years. Can you begin to see the world that's possible when communities most impacted by growth and displacement are resourced to determine their own futures? The road ahead is long. Our communities have always been able to do a lot with a little, but we also know that a few $1 million a year is not going to be enough to build the future we envision. We will need collaboration from everyone in government, in philanthropy, in business, and in community in Seattle to participate. We need you to see that in a country where loneliness and suicide is rising, where life expectancy is declining, and where our planet is on the brink of no longer being able to sustain, that our communities who have long known wisdom in our suffering have a way forward for all of us. I also wanted to add that the EDI Advisory Board has historically represented the communities that the program serves. It meets monthly and meticulously developing and guiding the RFP process, the EDI program, and has been successfully able to deploy funding in the last 4 years and anti-displacement strategies that I have talked about. Their leadership has been critical for OPCD and the city of Seattle moving the needle towards a truly equitable city through a race-based analysis of community development, funding, and anti-displacement advocacy. So that said, we are seeking candidates for open seats on the advisory board. This body will continue to promote access to opportunity for historically marginalized communities, including Indigenous, Black, people of color, immigrant communities, LGBTQ communities, and differently abled people within Seattle. We joyfully invite everyone to join us and pitch in. As Lila Watson said, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Thank you, and back to you, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Uba, for those words. And we will now begin our Q&A. So our first question today will come from Mari Salisbury, Converge Media, followed by Mark. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
I had a few closing things before we jump to Q&A.
Absolutely.
Sorry about that. I just want to close out before we go to the press to take a moment to thank the people who are on this call. Wyking, Uba, Diane, Councilmember Morales, who couldn't be here. They just represent some of the many, many people in the community who've been working tirelessly, not just this year, but over years to make Seattle a better and more equitable place. And so my thoughts and prayers are with you and your community, and my thanks, not just as mayor, but as someone who grew up here. You know, when I grew up in Seattle, the central area was about 75% Black. Today, by some counts, it's less than 14%. That amount of displacement itself is traumatic. And you place that on top of the systemic racism that has been felt for generations in our country against Black Americans and other communities of color. And you know that we as a city, if we truly want to be a welcoming and equitable place, have to not just say the words, we have to take the actions. And these actions today, I will recognize, are overdue actions, but they're important actions. And I wish you, Diane, and your group, and everybody in the board and the community, all the support and energy we can give you in the future days to make it successful. And the same with you, Wyking. Africatown has made a mark on this city that few others have been able to do. And really proud that we in the city have been able to help and contribute by almost $16 million to Africatown. But really, it's the energy you and community have built that have made it successful and will continue to make it successful. So I think all of us can celebrate today, all of the awardees who represent the best of our community and the hope of our community. They come together as community, not just forging their own place, but forging a better city for us all. So with that, I just, again, my heartfelt thanks and my congratulations to all the awardees who got awards today. And I think it's a tribute to our city as a whole. And I want to thank the City Council as well, and to the Office of Housing, the Department of Neighborhoods, others who holistically are looking how we can build a more equitable city. That if you look at just the grantees today who are able to get EDI grants, over 3 years, we've been able to give those same grantees over $100 million combined from different programs we have in the city so that we can build holistic equity in the city. So thanks for all you're doing. I want to thank the Midwives too. It's just so beautiful to have that kind of spirit here in Seattle, and the caring from before birth through healthy adulthood is what we want here in the city of Seattle. And with that, Anthony, we can go to taking question and answers.
Thank you, Mayor. Our first question today will be from Omari Salisbury, Converge Media, followed by Mark Stiles, Puget Sound Business Journal. Omari, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning. Do we get a follow-up question as well? Just so I know.
Yes, you do.
Okay, great, fantastic. First question. Well, first thing, congratulations, Central Area Senior Center, Africatown Community Land Trust. I mean, this is something that was communities long been waiting for. First question, Mayor, you kind of hit on it right here. Can you tell us how much money has your administration specifically put into Black community? I'm not BIPOC, but Black community through like EDI and different initiatives?
So, Omari, that's a great question. Let me get back to you on the exact numbers. As you know, we have a number of programs that are focused on building equity and to build out which of the ones have benefited both the Black community. But for example, in looking at the investments for the awardees today, we know we've done over $100 million, which includes the Office of Housing then is leveraged up to, we've announced over $1.5 billion in affordable housing since I've been mayor. And I signed an anti-displacement order that gives communities who have been displaced first shot at that housing, so that and the ability to return home. We also, we have one of our most promising programs for the future of Seattle, I believe, is our Department of Education and Early Learning through increasing our free childcare programs. And announcement, we have openings still in childcare. So if you're looking for childcare, please go to the website because we still have openings. And through our Closing the Opportunity Gap to the 2 years free college, we look at some of the statistics and that it is primarily students of color who have benefited from the Promise program. I don't have the African American breakdown, but we can get you those broader numbers. But I think over the last 3 years, if we look at some of the programs we've had, they've been enormously successful, but they don't begin to touch what we need to do as a city to reverse the impacts of systemic racism, the growing city displacement and gentrification as Seattle became more expensive. So I'm committed to doing more on that front.
And I'll follow up with your office. I think that you know, our community, the city as a whole, would really like to know and how much exactly has been put there. My second question is, you know, yesterday on the morning update show, I said that politicians in our city and in our state have decades, a track record of decades of finding the resources to treat the symptoms, but never really having the courage to cure the disease. Putting money to the side, Mayor Durkan, what are you committed to in regards to actual policy changes, laws, you know, the different ways that the city operates to actually bring sustainable systemic changes outside of money? What's going to change? Because we see that money doesn't solve quite every problem in our community here. We see that with homelessness. What policies and laws and ordinances are you committed to change to bring more equity and fairness to the Black community in Seattle?
So, Amari, I'm committed overall to the whole web. I think you're exactly right. Resources aren't alone the resolution, but they are part of what we have to do. If you look at the decades of neglect in Seattle, and not just the left behind, but purposely excluded, Central District was 75% Black because of redlining. That's where the Black community was permitted to buy homes and live. It became an incredibly vibrant neighborhood, and we're trying to restore and reclaim that. But it is the result of systemic racism. So if we want to truly build a city that is equitable, we have to have programs and policies in place across the board that give us things like access to affordable housing, access to true educational justice, starting with pre-K, but also starting with programs like the Midwives, good prenatal care, moving through preschool to closing the opportunity gap to college, but not just 2 more years of check a box college, but actually developing programs so that the students going through there have a shot at true economic opportunity. So it's combined with jobs. So we have been looking across the board for every policy to try to make a holistic approach across departments. One of the first things I signed coming in was a renewal of the commitment to RSJI and making sure that every department was looking at every one of our programs and policies to see how we could make equity a reality. And that includes everything from the displacement executive order I signed so that our housing actually went to people who were pushed out, to a range of other EOs that I've signed to make that real. So I think that we've got to do it, not just ordinances and policies, but we've got to examine in every one of our programs, are we moving further ahead for a more just city, or are we just treading water?
Thank you, Mayor. Our next question will come from Mark Stiles, Puget Sound Business Journal, followed by Erica Barnett, Publicola. Mark, the floor is yours.
Yes, will the city be putting out some more information about the awardees later today? But that's not my main question. My main question is, while the Growth Center and the Senior Center are, you know, very important places for the community there, the a key point of the program is anti-displacement. And I don't believe either of these projects has housing in that. That's not my question about why. My question is, how many units of housing has this program built and will it build in the coming year? Do you have any projections on that?
So Mark, it's a really good question. The EDI program itself is not necessarily focused on building the housing, but often it builds the capacity in those organizations or combines with the ability to get the housing. Our Office of Housing then comes in and folds around that. So for example, at Africatown, there are many units of housing that we were able to, in the Liberty Bank building, which we were able to cut the ribbon on last year. If you look at the Ethiopian Community Center and the Filipino Community Center, it is through the original grants through EDI gave them the capacity to do the planning, but then we're able to follow on with Office of Housing to actually make sure that there could be housing at those locations as well. Because as you go around Seattle, what we've seen is we had a really good model in El Centro de la Raza, who kind of over the objections of the city made sure that it incorporated housing. So in the last 3 years, I've worked really hard to make sure that as we're building this vision, that we have the ability and capacity to add housing where it's needed and work with communities. And that's why I was very proud to be able to give the grants to the Ethiopian Community Center and the Filipino Community Center so that they could build that kind of generational bridge so that people would not be displaced as quickly.
And can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
So it's my understanding that the Food Innovation Center is going to have some housing as part of it as well. Is that the case?
I think they're still working on the overall plan for that, and I would defer that to the Rainier Beach Action Coalition. They'd have a whole vision for that Food Innovation Center and making it a place that is also a place for a collection of incubators, food innovation, perhaps housing. So I refer to them, but I've seen different visions for that. And I think that with today's grant, they'll be moving forward on getting the land and then developing what the community decides it needs from that land most.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mark. Our next question will come from Erica Barnett, Publicola, followed by Dan Beekman, Seattle Times. Erica, the floor is yours.
Hi, Mark took a question about the RBAC Center, so I will just ask one question about the Equitable Investment Committee. The City Council proposed a budget that cuts your plan, Mayor Durkan, to invest $100 million by $70 million. And in the past, your office has suggested to me that the council's proposed investments like the Jumpstart initiative haven't gone through a racial equity process. So I was surprised yesterday to see your statement that said that the council was continuing the historic $100 million for communities through slightly different community-led processes. Can you, I guess, explain this, what seems like a change of heart? And do you still plan to convene the task force to decide how to spend that remaining $30 million?
So, Erica, I think the statement yesterday is I'm very heartened because I think that the City Council and I are actually very closely aligned. And that there is over $100 million that the first sheets have indicated is going to be committed to community investments. I actually think it should be more than that. I was hoping that with the additional revenues we found because of the sales tax increase that we had not expected, that they would increase the amount that was going to be invested in community by a significant amount. So I was disappointed there wasn't, and I look forward to working with them on how we can build that. So we'll be working, the task force is already up and running. They've been working on how they engage community throughout community. And so I'm very hopeful that when we come out of this and when there's a final budget, that we actually have a path forward that makes real on the commitments that we will invest generational investments in the city of Seattle, not just this year, but to find a path over 10 years to continue to reverse what took a generation to degrade.
Thank you, Mayor. Erica, was I correct in hearing you only had one question?
Actually, just very quick follow-up. When you refer to slightly different community-led processes, are you referring to the participatory budgeting process or some other process?
No, I think that, look, I haven't read all of the green sheets yet, but my read on it is that they are also committing $100 million to community investments. And I'm really heartened that they have followed my lead to do so. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that shakes out and how we move forward so that community can actually be the ones to engage and develop the recommendations for all of those investments, and it be community led and not led by gatekeepers at City Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. And our final question today will come from Daniel Beekman, Seattle Times. Dan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Anthony. Actually, I have a question for Tara, if she's still on the line. And I was just hoping to hear a little bit more about the birth center project and what it's going to be like.
Hi, thank you so much, Daniel. So we are looking to expand our services here in South Seattle and create one of the first BIPOC run and led birth center for families of color here in this area. Currently, there's over 1,000 families born in this zip code. And so we want to be able to provide a safe space for them to birth out of hospital with midwives, doulas, lactation support, and social services and mental health services all in one place. We've partnered with physicians at Swedish Cherry Hill to help us with any families who want to deliver at the hospital. So we provide an easy access route to care for the families here in this area.
Thanks so much. And do you have like a location where you're going to build the center yet, or is that still to come?
It's still to come. We are currently at MLK and Martin Luther King, or MLK and Othello Street, right off of the light rail. We're hoping to stay in this neighborhood or move down to the Rainier Beach light rail station.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Tara, and thank you everyone who joined us here today. And with that, we are going to conclude today's press conference.